Regina Davis had learned to read danger in subtle signs. The way Minho's fingers have stopped drumming on the table. How Johansson's smile has frozen into something carved from ice. The weight of federal agents pretending to be wealthy diners. Regina knows Lee Minho is about to die because 6 days ago she heard his fiancé say so. She'd been hidden in a restroom stall when Anne walked in, speaking rapid Swedish before switching to English. He thinks tonight is about celebrating our engagement. Instead, he walks into my evidence. The Lee Empire falls, and my father's organization takes Los Angeles. Regina had stood frozen, a black woman accidentally witnessing the conspiracy of powerful white criminals, knowing she should forget what she heard. But tonight, watching the elegant Korean man in the burgundy suit smile at the woman who's orchestrated his destruction, Regina makes a choice that will either save his life or end hers. Welcome back, my beautiful family and friends. I have missed you all, missed all the experiences we've had together. It's been a rough ride, but trust me, we're getting everything back and running. So stick around. I need your support on YouTube now more than ever. Thank you specially for sticking around to this very moment. If you're hooked in and you're ready to enjoy this story, click subscribe and let me know in the comments where you're watching from. Because tomorrow, I will be giving you another story just as interesting as this one, and you don't want to miss it. Now, back to the story. The 3 men at separate tables wore suits cut from the same expensive cloth. Their watches too similar, their postures too rigid. Real wealth slouched, real power relaxed. These men sat like they were waiting for a signal, their eyes tracking movements with tactical precision. Federal agents who'd studied rich people from photographs but had never actually been rich themselves. Regina had served enough genuine power brokers to spot the difference. The security cameras had been repositioned since her shift started 3 hours ago. She'd noticed immediately because she always noticed things people assumed she wouldn't. Now every lens angled toward table 7, where Lee Minho sat in his distinctive burgundy suit, the candlelight catching the subtle tattoo that crept just above his collar. Across from him, Johansson laughed at something he said, diamonds glittering at her throat, her face arranged in perfect adoration. They looked like a magazine spread come to life, the handsome Korean businessman and his elegant Scandinavian fiancée celebrating their engagement. But Regina had heard Anne's real voice 6 days ago in that restroom stall, had heard the cold calculation beneath the performance. He thinks tonight is about celebrating our engagement. Instead, he walks into my evidence. In the kitchen, 2 unfamiliar faces moved with military efficiency, their knife work too precise, their movements too synchronized. At the bar, a blonde woman in a business suit had been nursing the same martini for 40 minutes, her eyes constantly scanning the room, never once checking her phone like actual lonely drinkers did. This was a trap, an elaborate, federally orchestrated trap, and Johansson had designed every detail. Regina's hands trembled as she lifted the tray with Minho's whiskey. She thought about her daughter Zara, 8 years old with her gap-toothed smile and chronic asthma. Thought about the rent due in 6 days, about the hospital bills stacked on her kitchen counter, about how women like her survived by keeping their heads down and staying out of white people's business, especially the criminal kind. But her hands were already moving, pulling a pen from her apron pocket, scribbling 6 words on the back of a receipt with handwriting that shook despite her best efforts. She approached table 7, her heartbeat so loud she thought everyone in the restaurant must hear it thundering against her ribs. Anne glanced up at her with the dismissive half-smile wealthy white women gave service workers, already looking away before Regina even existed in her peripheral vision. Regina set down the whiskey with steady hands she didn't feel, and as she did, she slipped the folded receipt beneath Minho's fingers. His dark eyes flicked up to her for one electric moment. She saw him register her terror, her certainty, her desperate courage. "Your fiancé set a trap. Leave now." Minho's fingers moved beneath the table's edge with the casual grace of a man adjusting his napkin, unfolding the receipt so smoothly that Anne didn't even glance his way. Regina forced herself to step back, to turn toward the next table, to keep moving like her world hadn't just tilted on its axis. But she felt his eyes on her for that electric moment, felt him reading her terror and her certainty and the desperate courage that had made her break every survival rule she'd ever learned. When she risked a glance back, something in his face had shifted. Not panic, not fear, something far more dangerous, like watching a predator wake up behind civilized eyes. His gaze swept the Chandelier Room with new awareness, cataloging what Regina had seen. The two similar suits, the tactical postures, the cameras all trained on him like hungry mouths. His eyes lingered on the blonde woman at the bar, on the unfamiliar faces in the kitchen visible through the service window, on the men who sat too still at their separate tables. Then his gaze returned to Anne, who was laughing at something, her head tilted just so, her performance absolutely flawless. For a heartbeat, Regina saw something crack in Minho's expression, something that might have been grief or rage or both. He stood smoothly, reaching down to touch Anne's shoulder with what looked like affection. "Business call," he said, his accent barely noticeable, his tone apologetic. "You know how it is." Anne's smile never wavered. "Of course, don't be long." Minho walked toward the kitchen, not the front entrance. Regina's breath caught. Within 3 seconds, everything exploded. The man nearest to table 7 suddenly had a weapon in his hand and a badge held high. "Federal agents, nobody move." 2 more men stood, pulling guns from shoulder holsters, their identical suits suddenly making perfect sense. The front doors burst open and more agents poured in, tactical gear over their too similar clothing, voices shouting commands that turned the elegant restaurant into a war zone. Diners screamed, crystal shattered, someone overturned a table. And Anne Johansson's face transformed into an Oscar-worthy performance of terror. She stood with her hands raised, diamonds catching the light, her mouth open in a perfect scream. "Oh my God, what's happening? Please, I don't understand." But her ice-blue eyes found Regina across the chaos, and for one crystalline moment, the mask slipped. Recognition turned to understanding, turned to pure, murderous rage. Regina felt it like a physical blow, the moment Anne realized who had warned Minho, who had destroyed months or years of careful planning with 6 words on a receipt. Strong hands grabbed Regina's wrist and yanked her backward with enough force to make her stumble. Minho moved like violence personified, dragging her through the kitchen doors while federal agents shouted behind them. Chefs scattered, screaming, pans clattered to the floor. One of the unfamiliar kitchen staff, an agent, Regina realized, reached for his concealed weapon, but Minho was faster, slamming the man against a prep station hard enough to dent steel. Another figure materialized from the shadows near the walk-in freezer, moving with the same lethal precision as Minho, clearing their path with brutal efficiency. They burst through the back exit into the alley, where Los Angeles night air hit Regina's lungs like cold water, and she realized with perfect clarity that her life as she knew it had just ended. The alley smelled like garbage and expensive restaurant waste, grease and rotting produce mixed with the exhaust from downtown traffic. Regina's lungs burned as Minho spun her against the brick wall, not gently but not cruelly either, his hand beside her head and his face inches from hers. His eyes were dark and utterly cold, and Regina understood in that moment why people feared this man. "Tell me everything," he said, voice low and deadly, "right now." The words tumbled out of her like water breaking through a dam. The restaurant 6 days ago, hiding in the stall when Anne walked in speaking rapid Swedish on her phone. The way Anne's voice had dropped when she switched to English, cold and calculating. He thinks tonight is about celebrating our engagement. Instead, he walks into my evidence. The Lee Empire falls, and my father's organization takes Los Angeles. Regina described every suspicious detail she'd noticed tonight.
The repositioned cameras, the federal agents pretending to be diners, the unfamiliar kitchen staff who moved like soldiers, the woman at the bar nursing the same drink for 40 minutes. Minho's expression grew colder with each sentence until he looked carved from winter itself. All warmth bled out and replaced with something ancient and merciless. "Anne didn't just set a trap for me," he said, his voice deadly quiet. "She set one for my entire organization. I was bait. My people were the real targets, a mass arrest coordinated across the city." His jaw clenched so hard Regina could see the muscle jump. "You didn't just save my life, you saved my empire." Regina opened her mouth to respond, but movement caught her eye. A red laser dot appeared on her chest, a tiny circle of light that tracked slowly upward toward her heart. Her brain screamed at her to move, to dive, to do something, but her body had turned to stone. She'd never seen death coming for her so precisely, so clinically. Minho slammed into her with the full weight of his body, tackling her behind a parked sedan as the gunshot cracked through the darkness. The sound was deafening in the enclosed space of the alley. Bullets sparked off brick where her head had been seconds before, chips of masonry raining down on them. Another shot punched through the car's window above their heads, and safety glass showered down like crystalline rain. Regina's ears rang, her vision swam. Minho's weight pressed her against cold, filthy concrete, while more shots rang out, each one hunting for her life with professional precision. "They're not shooting at me," Minho said into her ear, his voice somehow calm despite the chaos. "They're shooting at you. Anne's backup plan, if I survive the raid, kill the witness who warned me." Regina realized with crystalline, terrible clarity that her life as she knew it was over. There was no going back to her apartment in Koreatown, no returning to her daughter's bedtime routine, no pretending this night had never happened. She was either going to die in this alley with her daughter losing her mother, or she was going to become the most hunted civilian in Los Angeles. There was no third option, no reset button, no way to undo slipping that note to a man she barely knew. "Can you run?" Minho asked, his eyes scanning the alley shadows. Regina thought about Zara, about her gap-toothed smile and her inhaler on the nightstand, and the way she said, "I love you, Mama," every single night. "I don't have a choice," she whispered. His smile was sharp as broken glass. "Good answer. Stay low and follow me."
The safe house was nothing like what Regina expected from crime movies. No leather furniture or cigar smoke or men in pinstripe suits playing cards. Instead, it looked like a Silicon Valley startup, all clean lines and standing desks, multiple computer screens casting blue light across focused faces, people working with the intense concentration of coders on a deadline. The space occupied the top floor of what appeared to be a legitimate tech company, hidden in plain sight among downtown LA's forest of glass towers. Minho's inner circle gathered in a conference room with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the glittering sprawl of Los Angeles. Regina stood near the door, still trembling from adrenaline, acutely aware that she was the only woman in a room full of dangerous men who were deciding whether she was an asset or a liability. Ji-hoon entered last, moving with the kind of controlled violence that made Regina think of documentaries about apex predators. He was younger than Minho, maybe early 30s, with a scar cutting through his left eyebrow and eyes that missed nothing. He didn't acknowledge Regina directly, just pulled up files on the massive screen at the room's center. Anne Johansson's face appeared, frozen in a candid photograph that made her look softer than the woman Regina had seen tonight. Then more photos. Anne at charity galas, Anne in business meetings, Anne laughing on a yacht. A life meticulously documented and completely false. "She's not just working with federal agents," Ji-hoon said, his English accented but precise, his tone flat as a coroner delivering findings. "She's using them as cover for something much larger." More files appeared, organizational charts, financial records, surveillance photographs of men Regina didn't recognize. The Johansson syndicate, Ji-hoon continued, Scandinavian organized crime. They've been trying to establish control over Asian American criminal networks on the West Coast for the past decade. Traditional methods failed, so they tried something different. The screen changed to surveillance footage, and meeting with men in expensive suits, her body language completely different from the soft fiancé Regina had seen at the restaurant. This Anne looked cold, calculating, powerful. Anne Johansson is Lars Johansson's biological daughter, Ji-hoon said, and Regina felt the room's temperature drop. She was placed in Min-ho's path 4 years ago at a gallery opening in Seoul. Every moment since then was calculated. Every smile, every intimate detail, every declaration of love, all of it was strategy. She was trained from childhood to infiltrate and destroy the Lee organization from within. Regina watched Min-ho's face. He stood near the windows, backlit by the city's glow, and he didn't flinch at the revelation. But something behind his eyes went very still and very cold, like watching water freeze in fast motion. Tonight was the culmination, Ji-hoon continued, a coordinated federal raid designed to arrest Min-ho and dismantle our entire network simultaneously. Operations across 5 states were about to be hit. Our people in Seattle, San Francisco, Las Vegas, all targeted at the same moment. He paused, his eyes finally moving to Regina. If not for Miss Davis, we'd all be in federal custody right now, and the Johansson syndicate would control Los Angeles by morning. Every man in the room turned to look at her. Regina felt their attention like physical weight. Dangerous men examining her like something unexpected and potentially useful, trying to decide what to do with the waitress who'd accidentally saved their empire. Min-ho spoke first, his voice cutting through the tension like a blade through silk. His English was accented but precise, each word chosen with care. You walk away. New identity, new state, new life. My organization handles the details. Documentation, finances, relocation. You and your daughter disappear like you never existed. It was generous, more than generous. It was safe, complete, exactly what any rational person would accept. A chance to vanish with Zara, to start over somewhere far from Los Angeles and Anne Johansson's reach. Regina opened her mouth to say yes, to take the gift she was being offered. Different words came out. No. Min-ho's eyebrow lifted slightly, the only indication of surprise on his otherwise impassive face. No, Regina repeated, her voice stronger now. My daughter has medical bills that would bury most people. She needs consistent care, specialists who know her history. She needs me, not some new version of me pretending our life never happened. She took a breath, meeting Min-ho's dark eyes directly. And Anne already knows I helped you. She saw me in that restaurant. She'll frame me as your accomplice, paint me as the other woman who helped a criminal escape justice. She'll destroy my daughter's life to punish me. Regina straightened her spine, meeting the eyes of killers around the room. Running just means hoping she forgets about me. I won't hope. I'll finish what Anne started, properly. The room went utterly quiet. Ji-hoon's expression shifted from neutral to something that might have been impressed. An older man with scarred knuckles and silver threading his hair smiled like he'd just witnessed something unexpectedly delightful. Min-ho studied her for a long moment. His gaze so intense, Regina felt it like a physical touch. You're braver than my entire security team, Miss Davis, he finally said. Possibly insane, but I don't waste assets. He glanced at Ji-hoon. Keep her close. Train her if she needs it. She has instincts worth more than expensive equipment. Regina realized with sudden clarity that she'd just enlisted in a war she barely understood, that she'd crossed a line most people never even saw. Her hands were still shaking, but her voice was steady. One condition, she said. Every man in the room looked at her like she'd grown a second head. People didn't give Lee Min-ho conditions. People didn't negotiate with crime bosses after being offered sanctuary. Regina held Min-ho's gaze. My daughter stays protected. Whatever happens to me, if I get arrested, if I get killed, if everything goes wrong, nothing touches Zara. She gets care, she gets safety, she gets a future. That's non-negotiable. The silence stretched for 3 heartbeats. 4. Regina could hear her own pulse thundering in her ears. Done, Min-ho said without hesitation. Your daughter gets 24-hour protection starting tonight. Her medical bills disappear. Her future is secured regardless of what happens to you. You have my word. And in this business, Ji-hoon added quietly, his word is worth more than any contract. Regina nodded once, sealing a bargain that would either save her life or end it. Made with men who operated in shadows while she'd spent her entire life trying to stay in the light. The news broke at dawn, flooding every screen in the safe house with Ann Johansson's face. She sat in what looked like a federal protection facility, her blonde hair slightly disheveled in a way that appeared artfully natural, tears streaming down her cheeks while her makeup remained somehow perfect. Her voice broke at precisely calibrated moments as she told her story to a sympathetic reporter. I thought I was safe with him, Anne said, her accent making her sound vulnerable, foreign, victimized. I didn't know what he really was, what his organization did. When I discovered the truth and tried to leave, he threatened me. He said no one would believe me over him. The edited recordings played next, Min-ho's voice stripped of context, made to sound cold and threatening. Conversations about business twisted into something sinister. Anne had been recording everything for years, Regina realized with sick understanding, building her evidence piece by careful piece. Then, Anne dropped Regina's name like a bomb. The other woman who helped him escape justice, Anne said, her voice hardening just slightly. A waitress named Regina Davis. She's been working with the Lee organization for months, helping them evade federal investigation. She warned him about the raid. She's not some innocent bystander. She's an accomplice. Regina watched herself become a headline villain in real time. Her employee photo from the Chandelier Room appeared on news sites beside Min-ho's professional headshot, both of them labeled dangerous criminals. But the coverage carried an ugly undercurrent that made Regina's stomach turn. The threatening black woman who seduced and assisted a foreign criminal against an innocent white victim. Old racist tropes wrapped in new language. Fear of black women's sexuality and criminality coded into every news story. Her phone exploded with messages. Former coworkers asking if it was true. Her daughter's school calling with concerns about Zara's safety and well-being. Her landlord texting that police had been asking questions and maybe she should find somewhere else to live. Neighbors she'd known for years suddenly treating her like a stranger, like a threat. The media narrative painted Anne as the brave survivor and Regina as the dangerous other woman, the help who'd overstepped, the black woman who'd corrupted the situation, the accomplice who'd helped a foreign criminal escape American justice. She's weaponizing everything, Ji-hoon admitted, watching the coverage with what might have been professional appreciation. Race, gender, xenophobia, the whole foreign threat narrative. She's rewriting the entire story, and we can't counter it without exposing our actual operations. But Min-ho wasn't sitting idle. Regina watched as his team worked with focused intensity, pulling files and recordings from secure servers. Unedited conversations that showed Anne's true voice, cold, calculating, vicious. Financial documents tracing money from the Johansson syndicate to accounts in Anne's name. Surveillance footage of her meeting with her father's lieutenants. Evidence of fabricated reports, manipulated federal agents, ordered hits on rival organizations.
"We have everything we need to destroy her," Minho said quietly, his eyes fixed on the screens showing Anne's performance. "Except one thing." "Her location," Regina said. Minho nodded. "She's in federal protection now. Could be anywhere. We need to find her before she disappears completely, before the narrative she's built becomes the only truth anyone believes."
Regina's eyes burned from staring at screens for hours, the blue light making her head throb. Ji-hoon had set her up at a workstation with transcripts of Anne's intercepted communications. Phone calls, text messages, emails, all captured through methods Regina decided she didn't want to know about. She read through conversations between Anne and her handlers, between Anne and people whose names were redacted, searching for anything that might reveal where federal protection had stashed her. That's when she saw it. A phrase repeated 3 times across different conversations, always in the same context. The Glass Cathedral. "I'll be safe at the Glass Cathedral. They can't touch me in the Glass Cathedral. The Glass Cathedral is untraceable." It sounded like poetry, like something romantic or religious, but it felt like code, like the kind of phrase wealthy people used when they thought the help wasn't paying attention. Regina had spent a decade listening to rich patrons discuss their lives while assuming her presence meant nothing, their words flowing around her like she was furniture. Glass Cathedral. Religious imagery? No, Anne wasn't religious. Architectural then. Symbolic. Regina pulled up luxury real estate databases for Los Angeles, her fingers moving quickly across the keyboard. She searched for buildings with distinctive glass architecture, high-end properties that might appeal to someone with Anne's taste for drama and symbolism. She cross-referenced with properties known to house federal witnesses or criminal informants, places with enhanced security and government connections. The Pinnacle Tower appeared on her third search. Downtown's newest luxury development, a 40-story glass structure that locals joked looked like a modern cathedral, all soaring lines and reflective surfaces that caught the sun like a beacon. The penthouse suite was registered to a shell corporation that, after 2 more searches, traced back to a federal protection program. "That's where she is," Regina said, her voice cutting through the quiet hum of the safe house. She pointed at the screen where the Pinnacle Tower's promotional photos glowed. Her safe house, the Glass Cathedral. Minho crossed the room in 3 strides, staring at the screen like she'd just performed magic. "You found that from one phrase?" "I'm good at noticing things people think don't matter," Regina replied. "Wealthy people talk about their lives like service workers don't have ears. I've been listening for years." Minho stared at her for a long moment, something shifting in his expression. Not quite respect, but recognition. "I'm starting to see that," he said quietly. He turned to his team, his voice taking on the hard edge of command. "We move tonight. Full team. Ji-hoon, I want electronic countermeasures and someone who can handle federal security systems. Bring the unedited recordings, the financial documents, everything we have on her real identity and the Johansson syndicate." His jaw tightened. "This time we bring evidence that destroys her completely. She wanted to rewrite the narrative. We're going to show the world what the real story is." Ji-hoon nodded once, already moving toward the equipment lockers. Regina felt her heart hammering against her ribs. This was real now. Not hiding, not planning, but action. She'd found Anne Johansson, and now they were going to finish what had started. The Pinnacle Tower penthouse had floor-to-ceiling windows that made Los Angeles look like a glittering kingdom spread beneath them, millions of lights twinkling in the darkness like fallen stars. Anne Johansson stood in the center of the white-furnished space wearing all white, calculated symbolism of innocence and purity, the victim dressed for her vindication. She was flanked by 2 federal handlers in dark suits and a man whose Johansson syndicate tattoos were barely concealed beneath his collar, the kind of enforcer who'd killed for the family business since he was old enough to hold a weapon. When Minho, Regina, Jihoon, and 2 others entered through the service entrance they'd accessed by disabling security with brutal efficiency, Anne's carefully constructed mask cracked for just a moment. Regina saw genuine surprise flash across those ice-blue eyes before the performance snapped back into place. "You brought the waitress," Anne said, her voice dripping contempt like poison. "How appropriate. The help who thinks she matters." She turned to Minho, her chin lifting with theatrical confidence. "I have recordings of everything you've done. Every crime, every deal, every body. The moment you touch me, it all goes public. You'll spend the rest of your life in prison." Minho smiled. It was the most frightening expression Regina had ever seen, cold and sharp and utterly merciless, like watching death put on a pleasant face. "Funny you should mention recordings," he said quietly, pulling out his phone. "I have some too." He pressed play. Anne's voice filled the penthouse, but not the soft, vulnerable voice she'd used on the news. Her real voice, calculating, vicious, speaking rapid Swedish before switching to English. The recordings were damning, clinical, devastating. Her true identity as Lars Johansson's biological daughter. 4 years spent infiltrating Minho's organization, sleeping beside him while planning his destruction. Federal agents she'd manipulated and paid off. Evidence she'd fabricated. Murders she'd personally ordered. Her detailed plan to destroy the Lee Empire and hand territorial control to her father's syndicate, establishing Scandinavian dominance over West Coast organized crime. "He was so easy to fool," Anne's recorded voice said with cold amusement. "Men like him think with their egos and their dicks. 4 years of playing the perfect fiancé, and he never suspected." The federal handlers' faces went pale as bone. Regina watched them realize in real time that they'd been played, that their careers were about to burn along with Anne's carefully constructed lies, that they'd been cover for an international criminal conspiracy. The Johansson enforcer reached for the gun concealed at his back. Regina moved without thinking. 3 days of intensive training with Jihoon had rewired her reflexes, teaching her body to react faster than conscious thought. She grabbed a heavy marble sculpture from the side table, some abstract thing worth more than her car, and swung it at the enforcer's gun hand with all her strength. The weapon discharged with a deafening crack. The bullet punched through one of the floor-to-ceiling windows, glass spiderwebbing outward in a beautiful, terrible pattern. Jihoon was on the man in seconds, disarming him with brutal precision, slamming him face first into the pristine white floor. But Regina had made the first move. A waitress who'd served drinks a week ago. A nobody who'd become someone who refused to die quietly. Anne stared at her with undisguised hatred, all pretense of innocence finally stripped away. Anne stared at Regina with undisguised hatred, all the careful beauty stripped from her face and replaced with something raw and ugly. "You stupid girl," she hissed, her accent thickening with rage. "You have no idea what he is, what you've done. You think you're the hero? You just saved a monster." "I know what you are," Regina replied, her voice steady despite her racing heart. "That's enough." Anne turned to Minho, playing her last card with desperate confidence that bordered on delusion. "You won't kill me, Minho. Whatever you think now, whatever you've heard, there was something real between us. At least at first. You felt it too." Her voice softened, became intimate. "You can't kill someone you loved." Minho stepped aside, his expression cold and utterly final. "I won't kill you," he said quietly, "but she will."
Regina held up the phone she'd lifted from Anne's designer purse during the chaos, pickpocketing skills learned from teenage years in foster care, muscle memory she'd thought she'd forgotten. The phone's screen glowed in her hand, showing contacts, encrypted files, everything Anne had been too arrogant to properly secure because she'd never imagined the help would dare to touch her belongings. This phone contains every contact, every plan, every piece of evidence about Johansson's syndicate operations and your role in them, Regina said, her thumb hovering over the send button. This goes to every federal office, every investigative journalist, every rival organization in Los Angeles. Everything you built, everything you planned, it all burns right now. Anne's face transformed. The mask shattered completely, revealing something feral beneath the civilized surface. She lunged at Regina with fingernails like claws and rage that looked inhuman, a sound tearing from her throat that was more animal than human. Ji-hoon caught her mid-leak with brutal efficiency, slamming her against the spider-webbed glass hard enough to make the entire window shudder. He secured her wrists with zip ties that bit into her expensive skin, her designer white outfit now smudged and torn. Regina pressed send. The phone chirped cheerfully as gigabytes of evidence transmitted across Los Angeles like a virus spreading through a network. Files uploading to secure servers, emails firing to dozens of recipients, evidence multiplying and dispersing beyond any hope of containment. Anne screamed, pure fury echoing off glass walls and white furniture, the sound of an empire collapsing in real time. "You destroyed everything! Everything I built! Years of work!" "No," Regina said quietly. "I just showed everyone what you already were." The arrests came fast. Federal agents swarmed the Pinnacle Tower within minutes, some to take Anne into custody on charges that would multiply by the hour, others desperately trying to distance themselves from the scandal, already calling lawyers and preparing statements. The Johansson syndicate's U.S. operations began collapsing as evidence spread to rival organizations and law enforcement agencies across 3 states. Anne had been playing all sides, manipulating everyone, trusting no one, and that isolation destroyed her faster than any bullet could have. Regina watched them drag Anne away, still screaming threats and promises of revenge, and felt nothing but cold satisfaction. The woman who'd tried to destroy her, who'd orchestrated an execution while wearing diamonds and smiling, was finally seeing consequences for the empire of lies she'd built.